Are you tired of wasting materials when crafting the best Artian weapons? You are in the right place. I wasted a lot of materials and a lot of time crafting a bunch of Artian weapons. So it is my turn to save you from the hassle and from wasting your precious materials by teaching you the basics. This video will also teach advanced players the best methods and practices in crafting god tier Artian weapons as quickly and easily as possible. Artian weapons are commonly the best weapons you can have for your build so far, but it's not always the case. Some builds requires the highest tiers of regular weapons that you can craft from monsters. And of course, I will be covering the best builds at some other time. Artian weapons or the feature itself will be unlocked by completing a specific story mission in chapter 4. And you cannot miss this. You will be unlocking the lower tier of Artian weapons and you can craft Artian weapons by speaking to Gemma. When it comes to crafting these weapons, each weapon type requires different types of materials. For example, the Artian longsword requires a blade, a tube, and a disc. Or the Artian greatsword requires a blade, another blade, and a tube. There are 3 tiers of Artian weapons, first, second, and third tier, which is the highest so far. You need to have the same grade of materials for you to craft a specific tier. Like for example, to craft a Rarity 8 longsword, I need a piece of Rarity 8 blade, a Rarity 8 tube, and lastly, a Rarity 8 disc. So which one will you aim for? In my honest opinion, you shouldn't bother crafting Artian weapons 1 and 2 to save a lot of time. Then focus on the Rarity 8 Artian weapons or the highest tier in the game as per making this video. The reason why is that it's easy to focus on hunting the highest grade materials to craft Rarity 8 Artian weapons, and it shouldn't take long for you to reach the point where you will hunt the highest level of monsters or the rank 8 grade hunts. So the lifespan of the weaker versions of the Artian weapons will be short-lived. Focus on upgrading and using your regular weapons and maxing them out first before you try to hunt materials for Artian weapons. Like for example, I stuck to my Lalabarina longsword before trying to hunt for weapon fragments for my Rarity 8 longsword. So how do you get these materials? In fact, it is quite simple. There are 2 major methods when getting Artian weapon fragments. The first one is defeating high-level tempered monsters which randomly spawns on each biome and get random weapon fragments as rewards. Tempered monsters are stronger versions of the current monsters in the game. Not all tempered monsters drop the highest grade of Artian fragments, but you will never go wrong by checking their rewards before hunting them. What you want are monsters that drop red-colored weapon fragments, which are called Ancient Weapon Fragments. Ancient Weapon Fragments are Rarity 7 weapon materials, which will turn into Rarity 8 weapon fragments after appraisal, which is the highest grade of Artian weapon materials as mentioned previously. But you will ask me, hey Samurai, it will take us ages to hunt for fragments if tempered monsters spawns randomly. This may be true, but there is an easy way in all of this. You don't need to hunt the key tempered monsters manually. You can just join players online by accessing rank 7 and rank 8 SOS quests by talking to Alma. Usually, a tempered Arcfield and another tempered monsters quest are posted in your SOS quest menu. Rank 8 dual monsters which reward you a ton of highest grade materials that we are looking for. The second fastest way to get ancient weapon fragments is relic melding, and you can access this feature by talking to the old lady in Suja. You can use unwanted weapon fragments to create new ones, but I don't suggest sacrificing your highest grade weapon fragments. Exchange gold relic tickets for a ton of ancient weapon fragments, and I do have an easy way of getting gold relic tickets which I covered in my previous guide. I've covered in detail the top 3 easy and fastest methods to farm decorations and ancient weapon fragments, so I suggest checking this video as well. Link in the description or click the card here. Keep in mind as well that you can only start melding ancient weapon fragments when you reach Hunter rank 50, or else you can only meld lower rarity of weapon fragments. Note as well that the results of melding are random, so you will need a lot of golden tickets to get specific materials which I will dive into later on. On the other hand, reach Hunter rank level 100 which let you meld specific Artian parts, so you can lessen the RNG in exchange for more points. When examining each of the weapon fragment materials, you will see that each of them has different properties. All of them will have random infusions and element types, giving you great flexibility later on. So what are infusions? Each weapon fragment has infusions and take infusions as your weapon stats modifiers. As per the recording, we can only have two types. The first is attack infusion and the second one is affinity infusion. So using 3 fragments that provide attack infusions will increase the weapon's raw attack stat. The same thing applies to affinity infusions. Each affinity infusions adds 5% affinity, so using 3 fragments with affinity infusions will add a total of 15% added affinity. So it is highly advisable to use the same types of infusion to gain the highest stats possible. Like for example, if I want to create a fire longsword, I will use 3 fire-based weapon fragments with all of them infused with attack. So the end product will have the highest raw attack and fire elemental damage as possible. Aside from infusions, you do have elements that you can also customize. Each fragment has its own element type, and using 2 fragments with the same element type will determine the final element of your Artian weapon. Let's use my example here. If I want to make an Artian longsword that can inflict paralysis, I will make sure to use 2 weapon fragments that have paralysis set as its element type. To make things simple, if 2 weapon fragments were used and both had the same element, it would determine the final element of the weapon after post-crafting. To make sure that you will be getting the element that you want, you don't need to guess the outcome because the final results will be posted in your crafting menu before processing the weapon. If I use a weapon fragment that has a different element as the third component, notice that the final product element will still be paralysis. But what if you use 3 weapon fragments with 3 different elements? The weapon would simply turn into a raw weapon without an element. But to be clear, you don't want to use different types of parts for your final Artian weapons, since I've mentioned that for you to have the highest stats possible, all of the weapon parts that you should be using needs to have identical infusions and elements. Like 3 attack infusions and 3 identical elements like what I have here. I am using 3 fragments with all 3 of them having attack infusions and paralysis set as element type. So let's say you've already crafted your first Artian weapons, and let's use my longsword as an example, which is centered around attack and can inflict paralysis. It is now time for the upgrade process, which will not only increase its raw and element stats, but also give it with reinforcement bonuses. Talk to Gemma and select the Reinforce and Dismantle menu to upgrade your crafted Artian weapons. To upgrade Artian weapons, a player needs special ores like Dryaricite, Speclite, Argisite, and Orichalcite, which is the highest grade of ore in the game in terms of Artian upgrades. You can get these ores from accessing festival shares over time, so it is a little bit time gated if you rely on this method, or you can smelt unwanted monster materials in a Zeus's smelting foundry to get more Orichalcite. You only need 50 Orichalcites to max an Artian weapon, so keep this in mind. Moving on to the tricky but fun part of the process, the reinforcement bonuses. When you successfully upgrade an Artian weapon to level 5, it will also unlock 5 reinforcement bonuses, which increases the weapon stats further. These 5 reinforcement bonuses look random, but it's actually not. More onto this in just a second. The possible reinforcement bonuses that you can get in a weapon are Affinity Boost plus 5%, Attack Boost plus 5, Defense Boost, Element Boost, and lastly, Sharpness Boost plus 30. Now depending on your build, the best reinforcement bonus varies, but normally you would want to roll 5 attack bonuses, which is what many call a God roll. It seems a very daunting and impossible task to score perfect rolls such as multiple attack or element reinforcement bonuses, but it is actually doable by re-rolling. Remember where I mentioned that reinforcement bonuses are not random? It is indeed not random, but rather each account has seeded results. To understand this easily, just think that each player account has these predetermined results when it comes to reinforcements in every Artian weapons that they will craft. To start the reroll process, save the game first. Then let's craft paralysis longswords with 3 attack infusions. My goal is to create a longsword with a high paralysis power by trying to get as many elements boost plus 50 as my reinforcement bonuses. What I will do is I will craft 3 rarity 8 longswords. Then after crafting 3 Artian longswords, I will now start upgrading each of them to level 5 and observe carefully their reinforcement bonuses. For the first longsword that I crafted, I got reinforcement bonuses of Sharpness Boost plus 30, 2 Affinity Boost plus 5, and 2 element boost plus 50. I am not pretty happy with this one since I only got 2 element boost plus 50, but let me note this one for reference later on. Remember, you need to take note of the reinforcement bonus results of each of the longswords you upgraded. Use an Excel sheet to track the results accurately. Let's upgrade the second longsword and see what we will get. So the second longsword got attack boost plus 5, affinity plus 5, element boost plus 50, sharpness boost plus 30, and another element boost plus 50. This is much worse compared to the first one, so I will move on to the third longsword and see how it goes. But let me note these reinforcement bonuses for later use as well. Upgrading the last crafted longsword on this lineup, and upon doing so, I received 4 element boost plus 50 and a single attack boost plus 5. This is pretty good for now, but the process is not done yet. Going back to our list, here are all of the results that we got from all of the longswords we've upgraded. We are now certain that the third crafted longsword will have the best reinforcement bonuses among the 3, and the one that I will go for. I will quit the game and make sure I will not save my progress, and load my save to undo the crafting sessions that we just did a while ago. After loading the game, the main difference now is I already know what will be the reinforcement bonus results of my next 3 longswords by rechecking my list. Remember, we want the third longsword on this batch. So the next step is to craft the first 2 longsword by using random materials. I'm doing this because I'm saving my weapon fragments with attack infusion and paralysis element, so I will use my surplus fragments as sacrificial materials to craft the first 2 longswords. I will now craft the first 2 longswords with any surplus fragments, but since the third longsword is the one I want, I will make sure that I will use the right materials this time by using fragments with 3 attack infusions and 3 paralysis set as the element type. I will now head to the reinforcement tab and upgrade the third longsword to get my shiny paralysis longsword with my preferred reinforcement bonuses, and the process ends here. It may look complicated at first, but trust me, once you do it over and over, it gets easier in the long run. Here's a quick summary of the entire process. Save your game first before crafting. Craft 3 or more Artian weapons of your choice. Upgrade each of the Artian weapons to level 5 and note their reinforcement bonus results on an Excel sheet. Check the best reinforcement bonuses for you. If you find the set you want, take note of which Artian weapon provided the best results. In my example, the third longsword gave me the best elemental boost. Quit to the title menu without saving to regain the materials used. Log into the game and craft the unwanted Artian weapons with garbage materials, and make sure to use the right materials on your preferred weapon, which is the third longsword in this scenario. The Artian reroll trick is kinda complicated for starters, and here are the possible frequently asked questions that a player will have. Does dismantling Artian weapons affect the seed table or the results? The answer is no. You can dismantle with no issues while rerolling to get your materials back so you can upgrade more Artian weapons in the process. This will not affect the results of your reinforcement rolls. Does creating other weapon types affect the seed table or alter another weapon's reinforcement results? The answer is no. To avoid confusion, my general rule of thumb is to stay on a specific weapon type strictly when you are tracking your rolls. Like if you are creating longswords, stay on longswords and track your results on a specific sheet. If you are creating Artian greatswords on the other hand, track its results on another sheet. Think of it like each weapon has its own upgrade path. Separate progress, separate tracking sheets. Is rerolling required? The answer is no as well. Monster Hunter Wilds content currently can be completed with almost anything. If you decided to create a good Artian weapon with 3 attack infusions and 3 identical elements, you are good to go. You can disregard whatever you get as a reinforcement bonus and move on. But of course, if you are a min-maxer, you know what to do. Hunting for the best Artian weapons can be an addicting process or can be completely annoying for many. But regardless of what you pick, you will craft one anyway and you will need a lot of weapon fragments. This video will help you get the fastest materials possible, and I will catch you in the next video.